Hello and welcome to Municipal Matters here on your TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith. We are back after a brief hiatus that began when this COVID-19 pandemic started and the emergency declaration was put in place. So we decided to come back, and we're doing it through a different medium right now, doing this through Zoom. And we thought for the first time back, the first show back, we'd talk with both mayors at the same time, from Cobourg and from the municipality of Port Hope. So I'd like to welcome Mayor Bob Sanderson and Mayor John Henderson. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You too.
So let's go right back first to start at the very beginning of this. When this happened, what was the initial reaction? And we'll start with you, Bob. The initial reaction from the municipality of Port Hope Council.
Well, it's an interesting question because I think we all, to some degree, underestimated the impact that this would have. And I think as we've gone through the processes, we've certainly learned quite a few lessons. So I think it's been a staged process of acknowledgement and understanding, and certainly changing all our processes started to do that. And it probably added value to things like these kind of meetings that we're having. So there's a lot of positive changes, but I have to say that within the municipality, there have been a lot of challenges to get to where we are now. But I think Cobourg will say the same thing. The priority has been to keep the municipal government operating efficiently, and we've done that right across the board.
And John, the reaction initially from Cobourg Council.
Very similar to Bob. I think at first we were expecting, for those of us who were part of SARS, which I was part of in a different culture, we're thinking it's more like what happened in SARS, but we soon realized it's much bigger than SARS and became a pandemic. So I agree with Bob that it certainly had more depth and breadth than what we were expecting, because it's hit actually every facet within the municipality. And I concur with Bob that one of our first major was to put together what we call our emergency control group, and we meet daily, and at the same time, to Bob's point, work on dealing with the issues as they arise and being proactive, but at the same time realizing we still have to move the municipality forward. You can't stop the business of a municipality regardless of the situation.
So Bob, you referred to the challenges, and those challenges I'm sure are changing daily. What are you seeing as your biggest challenges in Port Hope?
Well, I think we went through one challenge, which was fishing, and
Right.
really restricted access to the river. We've restricted a lot of activities that we live for on a day-to-day basis. Recreational facilities, closing our facilities. I got to say that it's been very, very difficult, and it's going to probably get a little bit more difficult. But the support we've had from the community, and when I say the community, I mean right across Northumberland. Our statistics are phenomenal, and we talk about heroes. Every person out there that's following the rules, and protecting both themselves and everybody else is truly a hero. So we're going to continue to see a lot of changes. Hopefully one of the things that'll come out of it are going to be some positive things. And I certainly commend the relationship that all the mayors have had. Our MPP, we have regular discussions online. So the level of communication across the county, I suppose, and between the municipalities has an increase, and I would like to think that'll continue going forward.
And John, any big challenges or different that Cobourg Council has faced?
No, I think our challenges would be identical to many municipalities, whether Port Hope or others in Northumberland, or in fact across Ontario, and that is keeping an eye on our DBIA, which means our Downtown Business Improvement Area, and of course through the Northumberland Central Chamber of Commerce. I know they just sent me a report today, which I'm still reading, of the concerns, and anywhere from 40 to 60% are indicating they're suffering, and the next step is how do we help and what do we do about that? So I would say for us, that's probably going to be our greatest concern and challenge in Cobourg as we move forward.
Now, taking us behind the scenes a bit, council meetings. I mean, it's a new reality right now with the world the way it is. John, I know your Cobourg council meetings are now being done virtually.
That's correct, yes.
And
in fact, if I can add on, I don't know for sure if we were, but I know the Bill 187 was passed on Thursday. We worked over the weekend, And that following Monday, we already started our very first virtual meeting. And I do want to compliment our staff because of that, we've been operating almost flawlessly to this point. So it enables us to move the business of the municipality forward.
Is it the same case with council and council meetings in Port Hope, Bob?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the first order of business was to get so that we could, invoke the requirements of the legislation so we could have, quorum and have our meetings. I don't think we technically lost a step because that meeting occurred and was passed between our regular meetings, and we're back onto regular meeting schedules. And I think the dialogue and the ability to get the reports and how we conduct ourselves, is really probably flawless at this point in time. And there's been an interesting sort of feedback a little bit. It's almost like we can have more public input than we had before.
Right.
So we're looking forward to our next meeting, which is next week. We're trying to get it so we can actually live stream it. And if we can start to do that and this goes on, we can expand maybe the ability to have public input, in areas that we would, normally not have quite so many. We have the usual suspects show up for almost every
Right.
public meeting, but I'm not sure that we've engaged with the general public. So that might be an opportunity coming out of this.
Talk to us a little bit about the meetings. I'm assuming there's a lot of discussion in both council meetings about the pandemic. Is regular business also being addressed?
John?
Yes, if I can use the example last night, we had in two highlights. We had a social distancing bylaw. That was a quick one because it was tabled. The other one was the redeployment of staff to bylaw enforcement. That was a considerable conversation, as was the rest of our evening. So if you watch our Cobra Council meetings, they're barn burners, and
They are.
they continue. So I would agree with Bob that we haven't lost one step from where we were before.
And Bob, there were a number of things we were talking about on Municipal Matters before the pandemic hit. Is regular business continuing as well in Port Hope?
I would say absolutely. In fact, it's the bulk of our meetings is regular business moving it forward. And I'd also comment on staff. Although they're working at home in most cases, the reports that are coming forward are the ones we need to have. We are restricted a little bit by the emergency called by the province relative to, as an example, giving out building permits and going for some examinations. So there are small inconveniences, large if you're wanting to move a project forward and you're being delayed. But really, and I would concur with John, that the business has, and thanks to staff and to council, is going forward absolutely at its normal rate with a minimum number of restrictions, and those restrictions are really driven by the province.
Right. Talk to us a little bit then, Bob, on your side from the county. The county is doing the same thing with virtual meetings, and county business is being taken care of as well?
Absolutely. Step and lock and step together. Also probably enhanced to some degree because of the amount of dialogue that the mayors, are having, which are also council members. So I see the department meetings now probably expanding potentially to some degree, because if you can't get to that meeting before physically, perhaps you can now, on a virtual basis. So I'm very comfortable that the county business is proceeding as normal, recognizing as well, York, that what the county does is different than what the municipalities do. There's a far overreaching social requirement, long-term care that is occupying a lot of time, and the staff, the paramedics. This is an area where I don't think people understand exactly how much the county does in that area, and these are the people who are probably at the front of the line when it comes to taking risk and making sure that the rest of us are safe, and particularly the more vulnerable, which has been a very high topic, and I hope one that continues after this pandemic, where we start to recognize some of this work that's being done that was perhaps, in my opinion, shifted to the side. Like, yeah, it's there, but how big a problem is it? So the county is doing a great job forging forward. It is kind of interesting to some degree, sort of like yourself, York. who can get a haircut, who can shave.
Right.
You're at home, the kids run in, the dog barks. It kind of humanizes the whole thing.
I've been broadcasting my show from home since right after March break. Pretty much haven't left, and yeah, it's exactly that. It's the background noise. It's adding some real life to it that you don't get when you're in that official business setting. So, John, I'll start with you on this one about people working from home. Your staff working from home. Were there any issues at the beginning with getting people set up to be able to do that effectively?
From our end, no, we were well versed from our IT. Any glitch was easily resolved. So in terms of those continue, as Bob said, I don't think we've lost a heartbeat in any department, in particular planning and development. We continue to have a number of permits and projects in Cobourg. If you were to go to Glenn McGlashan's board, I think it would fill 2 walls.
Right.
And as Bob said, we haven't lost one heartbeat. The only thing we're going to have to learn to deal with, we're very used to having public meetings in Cobourg traditionally, but the question is, how do we bring that in virtually? And that's the next step that we'll be looking at as those site plans come forward to council.
And how many people are actually going to work? Is there anybody that's going to work at Victoria Hall?
A very, I would say, skeleton crew. Occasionally, I go in maybe once, twice a week to sign certain documents. The clerk may there, Mr. Davies, some members of finance. But I would say ultimately it really is a skeleton crew on shifts, on rotations. And the reason for that is because if someone were to receive unfortunate news, then as we all know, they, like everybody else, have to be isolated for 14 days. That allows us to bring in other individual in. So therefore, we're not losing any continuity
Right.
within our departments.
Bob, is it the same case in Port Hope?
Pretty much exactly the same, I'd say, but a little bit of expertise in lining up to give people and give them clear direction so that they would know what they can do at home, giving and making sure they had the appropriate equipment, that they also had sufficient training. And we are continuing that. We are offering courses to all our staff in everything from Excel to how to use your PowerPoints to how to handle your email better. So there's some upgrades on the process that our employees are having. With respect to town hall itself, it's closed, but there are still people who go in and out as required, and there's a sign in, a sign out, disinfection, all those kind of things are being done. The public is absolutely not allowed. The department that probably has the most activity is the finance department, because I think all our communities, I know Cobourg's the same, is recognizing the impact that this is having on our economy, on property owners, business owners, taxes, payments. So out of everybody, they have some new challenges and to incorporate. So the policies give some relief to people as recommended and quite frankly as required. I would, just as a rough estimate, say that 80+% of people paying tax and what have you need some help. Whether it's deferring penalties, we're not collecting any money for transit. People have to get around still. Parking is not being paid for. So I think the municipalities generally are doing a lot to try to alleviate that immediate pressure on our businesses and our citizens.
Right. We're going to learn a lot too going forward. A lot of benefits we can take out of the technology that more people can now use. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and talk about the latest announcements from the provincial government as Municipal Matters continues here on your TV. Welcome back to Municipal Matters here on your TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith. This is our first pandemic Zoom show on Municipal Matters, and I'm joined by Mayor Bob Sanderson and Mayor John Henderson from the Municipality of Port Hope and the town of Cobourg. Again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time to sit down and have this chat. I do want to talk about the provincial government, and they're basically the ones that are dictating how this is going to play out. Doug Ford this week revealed the three-stage plan with no date as to when that gets started. There's a lot of people that are out there in both communities and throughout Northumberland County that are really chomping at the bit to want to get things back to normal. Bob, first to you and your impressions on the strategy that's been laid out by the provincial government.
Well, I know it's a little bit vague, but I'm very supportive of it and understand that you can't put timelines on things. I think it would be a very big mistake. We've all probably had some sort of an illness or a flu where we thought we're totally okay. We get up and do some work and realize that, boy, that was a little bit too early. I give the provincial government a lot of credit, and the leadership, I think is strong, and the message is strong, and you can see that citizens are listening to it. And I think it's coming through. The messages that are coming through aren't just the political messages. I think they're messages from people saying what they feel, and our ministers and our premier are talking like themselves, and I think that really gives a certain level of comforts. From a municipal perspective, we are going to absolutely, be lock and step with what the provincial government recommends moving forward. And if anything, we might even be a little more cautious in some cases because everything has a local flavor to it.
Right.
Something you do in Toronto might not be able to be done here, and vice versa. But we are going to be very cognizant of what are the essential things we can move forward, but it's going to be done with the health department recommendations, understanding, and all the prevention. We're not going to go through all this and not stay safe.
No, absolutely. And John, in Cobourg, your perspective on the provincial government and the three stages.
I like to credit both federal, provincial, because it's a daunting task. It's something we've not had before us in a pandemic. And I concur with Bob that I'm pleased that politicians are actually taking direction from the Ontario Public Health based on scientific research, metrics, what's happening to date in cases, and more importantly, doing it in an effort to be very methodical with the idea of phasing in. And so I think that is a wonderful approach because as we know, and the Premier stated this, as did Prime Minister Trudeau, if we move too quickly because of weather, sunshine, hey, it's summer, forget what we're doing, it won't take long for us to end up in a disastrous result, which would put us all behind the eight ball. And that means all the good decisions that have been made would be lost with the snap of a finger. So I concur with Bob that it's a time to remain methodical. And I also appreciate that the Premier and Prime Minister have put a human face on this. I find the political piece is waning, even though there's always politics involved. And the message, I concur with Bob that MPP Piccini, in our case with MP Lawrence, we meet every Friday on virtual calls with the mayors in Northumberland County and Peterborough South. So that constant communication is helping all of us. And I can say, being on the Board of Health as a council representative from Northumberland County, I can assure you everything that's been done has been in alignment with our own health unit, which has been in alignment with the province. And so if anything's good to come out of this, as Bob suggested, we're probably more in alignment than we've ever been in past.
Yes, absolutely, and there has to be some positives that are going to come out of this. It's just a matter of when, and staying the course as we are all doing right now. Bob, what has the reaction been from the citizens in the municipality, good, bad, and otherwise?
Very accepting, very, very compliant. Obviously a few little, glitches here and there when we closed access to the river. There's people who hike along there every day. So we got some feedback, but most of the feedback, and virtually I would say if you categorize it, it's virtually 100%, is really understanding and being appreciative of what staff is doing. I think what the politicians, if you want to call us that at this point in time, are doing, how the community is rallying together, and I see the same thing across the communities. So I think generally I'm a little worried as to when people start to wear down a little bit. So we're trying to have an increased number of messages that go out to our citizens, and we're starting to talk about, can we put a little bit of fun together on these sort of things? Can we, do something to help entertain? Can we give directions, those kind of stuff?
Right, exactly. And you wonder how long it's going to take before that real wear down effect happens. John, same question about the citizens in the town of Coburg and their reaction.
Well, I can't say enough wonderful things about our citizens. They've been tremendous in all facets. Our business and industries who had to revamp are making face shields, equipment for institutions, revising their lines in other ways. So everybody is, we often say we're in tough times, people step up. And I can tell you our citizens, our businesses and industries are doing exactly that. The only subtle issue we're dealing with, and it's only, again, we're probably talking less than 1%, but I do want to remind those less than 1%, please help us by not littering in our parks. We're doing a great job from staff to try and keep them clean, in particular with masks and gloves and latex. Please remember they belong in the garbage, or take them home and put them in your own garbage. And the other one of less than 1% we're facing, and again, this is a very small number, but they seem to somehow believe that placing graffiti in our town is acceptable. And I want you to know that we've increased enforcement. And I want to make it very clear, if we catch you in the act, there's no doubt we're going to charge you. And in fact, we're now asking for court restitution on all these matters. So that's not how you help us in normal times. It's certainly not how you help us in challenging times. So my message to that less than 1% who may be listening, why don't you turn the hourglass and perhaps do something positive? Maybe make a call to a senior, make arrangements to pick up the groceries under social distancing, to deliver in a way. Maybe you can make a volunteer and arrange to work at a food bank. Perhaps you can go and help out in so many other ways. So that's my only message. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm talking less than 1%
Right.
of Coburg.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about something both towns have in common, and that is your downtowns. Both in recent years have been through some struggles, and recoveries have been happening and moving forward. We'll start with you, Bob, at downtown Port Hope and the businesses there. We know they're affected. That it's impossible that they're not. Is there discussion at this point yet at all as to helping to recover once things do start to ease off?
Yes, there is. The chamber is very active in this area as well, gathering information. I think John referred to some of the reports and surveys that are coming back. What we don't have yet is a plan. What can we do, and how can we help, other than the immediate things that we have done, deferring taxes, penalties, those kind of things. So that's a good immediate reaction. I don't know what the longer term is, because some of these businesses are probably not going to return. I mean, the reality is not everybody's going to survive economically this thing. I know that the provincial and federal government are looking at commercial rent subsidies. But in the end, we're seeing a significant, I think, as John was saying, the innovative ways to stay in business, and virtually is increasing. And we're fortunate because our economic development department did put a digital Main Street in last year, to assist business owners to be online. And I think that's hopefully helping at this point in time. How the buildings themselves, I mean, they're all virtually closed right now.
Right.
It's kind of emotional and sad when you drive through the downtown core of Coburg or Port Hope, and you see so few cars parked, and you see people sort of looking a little lost, and that's going to be really hard to recover. And whether it just be the taxes or not, people have huge mortgages on these commercial buildings. They have a lot of staff, but they're small businesses. They do not have, I can guarantee you, they do not have deep pockets. So we need to work with them, but I don't want to sort of point at one sector, because we have a rural area, we have agricultural people,
Right.
we have farmers markets. So I think it would be a mistake to focus on one, and what I think we're doing with the chamber and other communities. Can we get a cohesive understanding? We're all faced with the same thing. So when John and I talk, or the other mayors talk, we have the same problem, and hopefully we can bounce the ideas off together with the provincial government. So what's realistic to help, so we don't just do a knee-jerk reaction that really may or may not help and may have worse repercussions than if we did things normally. I think the federal and the provincial government are really doing a lot to help.
Right.
Municipality is going to have to probably step in before too long.
We are almost out of time. John, real quick, Cobourg Council and downtown and working with the businesses in town, looking ahead to the future. And is there discussion now about how to help out and get everybody back on their feet?
Yeah, I've just received today, I haven't read it fully, from Kevin Chamber of the protocols, procedures, as well as the DBIA. As Bob said, the agri-food culture allowed through IT development up to a $5,000 fund for businesses. Last I heard, 20 in the DBIA were taking advantage of that.
Right.
They decided through the DBIA to buy a card for downtown business that you can use in future to give to someone. I heard that was about $10,000 in a very short order. So again, it's following the attributes that are offered by federal, provincial government, but at the same time, us thinking collectively, for us with the chamber, the DBIA and council, thinking outside the box how we can help them to get their feet back, because this is going to be a long term. It's not going to happen certainly overnight, and it's going to be our challenge, and it's going to be Port Hope's challenge, and I think every municipality in Ontario, without question.
Exactly, no doubt about it. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy days to do this. Looking forward to having a chat again on Municipal Matters, another Zoom, hopefully next week. Thank you guys very much. Stay safe. And remember, we're all in this together. You've been watching Municipal Matters here on your TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith, and we will Zoom with you next time.